I'm Samarth, the founder of a startup called CurioBot. Before that, I was an investment banker. So I've been on the capitalist side. On the other side, I've also been the CEO of an education nonprofit, which was completely a nonprofit. So I've been on the socialist side as well, right? And I have a view on both models. In this new venture, I'm trying to sort of create something called responsible capitalism. So building with a capitalist mindset, but with certain sense of responsibility towards societal and environmental goals. So that's my claim to being a part of this panel.
Okay, so thanks Tanya and Haninder for inviting me. My name is Monica Mateu. I'm based in Barcelona. I work mainly right now with startups and investors, mainly with a company based in Lisbon called 3HP Global. 3XP Global, sorry, it's for People, Planet, and Prosperity. It's an investment fund that has a health fund and an impact fund. Previously, I have more than 30 years experience in corporate world in companies like Deloitte, HP, GB Foods, and also in the public administration. So I've been I had a really broad experience, always basically on innovation and startups, both public and private. And so thanks for inviting me.
Perfect. It's a pleasure to be here, and nice to know your backgrounds, Monica and Samarth. I'm a management consultant with an entrepreneurial background. I worked with tier 1 consulting firms advising public sector and private sectors. So the public sector included ministries, authorities, sovereign wealth fund. Most lately, the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Human Resource and Social Development. So I'm leaning more toward this path, but also as an entrepreneurial background, I manage the company Blocks Ventures. It's in fintech. So I have a bit of both with background with large organizations and startups.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, three of you. Let's define what's triple bottom line. Emad, since you were in the last introducing, why don't you take a crack? Help us understand in layman terms what is triple bottom line.
Sure, that's definitely a good question to start with. We've heard triple bottom line and also double bottom line. And I think if we think of double bottom line, it includes financial and non-financial aspects. But then we also hear a lot about the triple bottom line. And I think it's becoming much more common of a topic lately with ESG, environmental, social governance. So if I were to sum it up, triple bottom line is financial, profitability, social impact, and environmental impact. And now it's becoming more critical for organizations, not only to focus on financial profitability, but also the social and environmental impact.
Samarth, Monica, in case you want to add any flavor to this definition, bringing in more context.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. And there's more and more talk. I don't think a lot of people know about the actual terminology, but a lot of companies are seeing the pressure from consumers, from employees, even from investors like us. We only invest in impact related startups. So there's a lot of pressure on companies to become sustainable at a profitable level, but also social and environmental, of course.
Yeah. Yes, Emad, go ahead. Because I know, this is a definition you are also living and practicing on a day-to-day basis.
So one of the things I want to clarify that when people say social, it just doesn't mean for, let's say, socioeconomic weaker classes. So that's an important distinction that we need to have in our mindset, that it's not like, so even when you say societal impact, right, it could be for people in general, not having sort of difficult work hours or exploitative below market salaries or below minimum wages. So that's a very important distinction to make with respect to social. Often enough, social is confused with lower socioeconomic segment of people impacting them. No, it could even be at a societal level, So just that clarification with the social aspect. Environmental, I think it's slightly more straightforward.
Yeah, I was pretty amazed with the recent Apple's video. I'm sure many of you would have already seen, where they kind of reported their impact on environmental, all the initiatives they have taken in a very engaging video around how the offices are sustainable, how the products and even vendors, value chain, etc., etc. Actually, this arises a question, right? Since every organization, every entity, every individual have very different way of looking at how a triple bottom line can be structured. Uh, I don't know, Imad, if you want to take a crack, how to really demystify this complexity because it's very different for everyone. Is there a framework that one can think of and can start pocketing different entities within that?
Sure. I think when we try to dissect this topic, we can think of these aspects. What is social impact? What is environmental impact? So that's one thing, is the definition of it and what it includes. And then another aspect would be, what levels are we looking at? We've got governmental, businesses, and individuals. And then finally, it would be types of activities. Are we talking about activities that we're investing or capital that we're investing? So that's where, type of framework I see when it comes to addressing this topic, and we can dig deeper as we like.
Right. Perfect. So when it comes to sorry, Monica, you want to say something?
Just to add a little bit, I mean, when we look at, for instance, at our impact fund, what we're looking at are different areas like waste, villages, energy, of course, oceans is a big thing, also in the European Commission, everything that has to do with circularity, also cities. I've worked for the city of Barcelona, also the city of Sant Cugat, a smaller one, everything that has to do with impact in education. And of course, health. A lot of the startups, a lot of the corporations, a lot of the hospitals, when they talk about health, they don't separate health and impact anymore. So it's ingrained in these projects that health includes impact. And that's for our fund, that was not the case. At the beginning, we have the health fund and the impact fund. And I'm finding that people are like, what's the difference? There's no difference. There's no health without impact. That's what we're seeing.
That's a very, very interesting aspect. If any of the research or any of the innovation that has to happen in the health, it directly impacts the essentially social part that you're trying to scale. Absolutely. Now, I think in my mind, it's always very harder thing to understand, which is for profits, fine, there is a way to measure profits, right? You have PAT, EBITDA, whatever. You can run through the financial statements. And Monica, maybe the question is for you, since you are an investor and you have also kind of measure or assess how a startup or how ventures are impacting the social side of things and environmental side of things. What are the metrics that you typically follow or look at?
See, that's the thing. I don't think we have. So we're working on the metrics, we're working on the impact, but they're not definite metrics. So a lot of people look at some of the KPIs, or even corporations at the Norton and Kaplan. But I don't think there's, even within companies, sometimes one department will define some metrics, some KPIs, another department. I don't think there's like a standard set of measurements, but we talk a lot about customer loyalty, customer engagement, employee loyalty, employee satisfaction. So, I mean, I have 4 young kids, close to their 30s. They will not work for some companies. They just don't even work for some companies. They don't even buy in some shops. And it's like, wow, this is really different than before. So it's hard to quantify some of these KPIs. But they're definitely there. There's a lot of pressure there to have them. That's as much as I I have on that side so far.
No, makes sense.
You're also to learn today.
Yeah. Samarth, go ahead. Yeah.
So when I've been starting this entire entrepreneurial journey, I was thinking in terms of what is the metric and how do I quantify social and environmental, right? So I think while I obviously know what my profit aspirations are, the way we've thought about this is instead of quantifying metrics, can we at least begin by identifying what are socially or environmentally irresponsible actions as an, and then obviously not take those up. And I'll give you a specific example, right? Even if it has a cost implication.
Okay.
So as an example, if let's say I have to employ somebody in a resource full of India where there are enough people who are willing to work below minimum wages, right? If I take that entrepreneurial call and say that I will not pay anybody below minimum wages because that's an exploitative practice, right? Now, even though there might be people willing to work below minimum wages because just that so many people are looking for a job, right? It has a cost implication by having that as a policy that I will not pay below minimum wages, as an example. Another example on the environmental side is if I say that, hey, any of my programs that are running at any of my centers, we will not deploy single-use plastic, right? While it's still very difficult to do away with plastic completely, but at least what we've said is that we will not deploy any single-use plastic kind of material in our classes that we are running, right? Now that has a cost implication. So while it becomes difficult to report as an absolute cost percentage level, what my profitability would have been higher if I had done those same exploitative measures of paying below minimum wages or gone for the cheaper single-use plastic alternatives. So while we're not reporting it, but that's how we're thinking about our decisions, which have a direct impact on our bottom line. By taking more expensive material and by paying at least, I mean, we pay much more than minimum wages, but as a policy, we will never pay below minimum wages, even if the market can allow us to exploit that.
Got it. Got it. Sorry, Mohammed, you have your hand raised. So what we're doing is after the panel concludes, we will take up all the questions. So feel free to add your question in the, like in the box. Just to continue, Samarth, and like Monica, what I understand is there's no like definitive metric that we can put and pinpoint that this is what you need to track to understand the social impact. This is what you need to track to understand, environmental impact. But what I've seen is typically annual reports of the companies that do talk about how many lives they have touched. Say, for example, in bettering access to water, how much of the vendor value chain that they have revamped and the sourcing that they are doing is completely, circular, for example. So they come up, I think the industry is still grappling with what KPI metric to choose and report on. And I think, Monica, you rightly said, we are still learning, right? We are still trying to wrap our head around what are we dealing with on this topic.
Yeah, for instance, the other day, last week, we had the Trifernet Awards. This was awards on health and impact. And a lot of it was this San Juan Tadeu Hospital, Children's Hospital. And so big pharma companies are not into developing drugs for minority illnesses. Now, this is changing. This is changing because you need to provide also those solutions for kids that have rare diseases. And so there's a lot of also social pressure into those pharma companies doing not only the profit margins, but also the impact on given illnesses. Another example, for instance, I was helping this week also a construction company. There's a lot of, as you know, so Europe is based their 2030 agenda on two things. It's digital and it's green. And all of the funds for next generation are going to the different countries in Europe. And for instance, I used to work at EIT, Energy, so it's all the energy part. So for you as a company to get some of these funds, you need to prove the CO2 measures. So how much CO2 are you going to save by developing a new solution that might be digital, might be more sustainable, but the key metrics to get some of these funds for companies, even small companies, is the CO2 savings. So this weekend, I need to really study how to give an answer to that. And this is completely new. So SME companies before didn't have to come up with these metrics and explain exactly how their solutions are going to work in that sense. So it's definitely changing and pushing companies that way, also from the public government.
I guess it's a daunting task at the end of the day for everyone involved. And I do see that everyone is trying to be proactive, but our hunch is that most of the organizations are still not there yet, even thinking about how are they creating social impact or environmental impact more actively. Uh, just to delve deeper into the ecosystem, right? And Emad, maybe we can go to you and understand your perspective since you have worked with some of the like curve entity wealth funds in the kingdom. Uh, this ecosystem is complex, right? You have government, you have organizations. Uh, like, is there a way or like, is there a framework that one can think of how to collaborate with each other, right? There has to be certain way or certain process that one can put and have some process to this madness, right? Like this chaos needs to be managed well. If the bottom line needs to show across all three areas, right? So I don't know if you have seen, observed, or have thoughts about it.
Yeah, I think I agree with the rest of the panelists, and I think when it comes to measuring it, it's unlike financial profitability because they don't have the same unit. When we talk about financial profitability here, we have a currency, so it's easy to see what's changing. But when we talk about social or environmental, here we have different units. We're talking about social, it could be about job creation, it could be about education, health, and it goes on. So the units change. We're talking about environmental, it could be CO2 emissions, or it could be about electricity usage or water waste. So here the units change. So I agree that there isn't a way to define it, but also every party has the responsibility to define it depending on where they are in the ecosystem. And it differs which level are we talking about. Maybe I'll add here an example. When we're releasing or launching new initiatives or business streams in my company, Blocks Ventures, we actually have it embedded in our framework, regardless regardless where we are in the stage, is that we look at an initiative by seeing the impact and the ease of implementing it. Now, impact, we have financial and we have non-financial impact. Financial impact at this stage, given it's still starting, has more weight. But the non-financial impact also it includes the impact on social, environmental, governmental, commercial, and so on, and to what degree, and we define it. So if I were to say, how does it go as a process? It needs to start with defining it, and then you can assess it and then prioritize. And that's something that I do personally when it comes to working on these initiatives.
Yeah. No, very interesting. And I think someone made a very good comment. Andre, you made it. Is profit good or bad? And just going back to this part, one of the difficult aspect of prioritizing the let's call it like trilemma, right? You are creating profit, you also want to create social impact, and you also want to do good with the environment. Like these are strong forces against each other. If I'm in oil and gas, I'm an oil and gas company sitting out of Europe or Middle East. I'm creating jobs. I'm drilling, like getting the oil out and creating profits. It's very hard, even though the intent would be there to not impact the environment. One of the way to think about it is look, I will do what I do the best. I'm really good in making profits and a lot of profits. Can I allocate some of this profits and maybe pass or allocate some of these profits to other, organizations or specialists who can essentially, do or create or allocate some of the social benefits and environmental benefits that I can attribute back to my statements. And I know we had touched upon this topic last time around, but I really wanted to understand what do you think about this? And is this even a feasible way to structure it more, like aptly? Samarth, please go ahead.
So I think a few years ago, the government in India passed a law which mandated 3% of a company's profits to be spent on CSR activities, right? And they did not define specifically what the CSR activities, and this created a huge debate around this, right? So this is one example of effectively saying that, hey, Mr. Corporate, it's okay, you're creating your profits, right? As long as you attribute 3% of your profits to a cause of your choice, right? It automatically you're diverting funds from your profit-making activities to the societal causes that you support. So that's one example where, from a government standpoint, there was this entire intention. Obviously, there's always a gap between intent and implementation, but here a government was trying to effectively enable what you're talking about. That then it's very clearly measurable CSR as a percentage of spend on my P&L, even though I'm focused on maximizing my profit.
Yeah, I agree with that, and we come from the 90s, that year 2000, where we had the CSR, and it was kind of, in some companies, maybe a little bit of greenwashing, maybe a little bit of bottom up. I think when it really works, it's when it's ingrained, the SDGs are ingrained in the company strategy. It has to be part of the company strategy. It has to be the CEO pushing it down. And we have some examples. So the car industry in Europe is being forced by law to go electrical. Would have they done it unless that was something that they were forced to do? Probably not, but are they doing it? Are they going to do it profitably? Of course. The prices of cars are skyrocketing. Another example for me, very close example of a company that was working with us at Mobile World Capital. We have some startup programs. One of them is a venture builder. It's called the Collider. This company is one of the leading companies in the world, selling a few billion euros in meat producing. This is one of the top in Europe, at least. This company has developed a new startup on meat substitutes. So they're competing against themselves because they know there's so many, in this case, mainly pigs, that you can produce without being really, there's no more room. There's no more, the impact is too huge. So they developed this circular foods company. They went to the US, they went to Silicon Valley, they went to Israel, they went to the Netherlands, they went to the big food hubs, and they developed a new solution that, if you think about it, is directly competing with their bottom line and with their own company. And these people are doing great on leading the way. So, am I going to have competitors in this side? Let me be my own competitor and let me be the best one that I can be. So you also see that, and this company has a very strong social DNA associated with them, and they keep doing their profits on their main business, but here they're really starting up to ramp up in this new startup, which is now really big already. So these are a couple of examples of what you are asking.
Another example, probably so I buy Honda, right? The cars that I use are from Honda. So Honda has made it very clear for themselves that they're going to be taking out and away all the diesel-based engines. They are effectively going to even phase out from petrol to either fully electric or the hybrid technology, right? So the entire DNA of a company is effectively going to transition from their existing technology to a more environmentally sustainable product. Now, and that stated that as a entire metric, or let's say the number of cars sold as a percentage of portfolios they will be phasing out. In fact, they've even pulled out products that were profitable but not compliant with environmental norms. So there is intent from established companies to actually take this seriously and even change their own product portfolio, which has brought historical profits to effectively transition into a more, even though the cars are going more expensive as a result. But as a buyer, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. No, very interesting. And it does come to the fact, right, that at what level someone is taking the accountability and saying, I need to come up with various creative ways to have my own impact and then attribute it back to the impact I'm creating, either directly or indirectly for that matter. With that thinking, it also comes that there needs to be a force from some dimension, right? Either it comes from the organization directly, which is the best case scenario, where CEOs and operators, they do take the charge that this is on us and we will trickle it down. But there are other nodes as well, right? For example, Monica, you are an investor. It can even come from that angle that I'm an investor. I need to have a portfolio, and this is a criteria that is non-negotiable for new
Exactly.
venture that we invest in, right? So
And
this
you see a
also
lot of
starts
people,
aligning behaviors. Go
yes,
ahead, please. Yeah.
yeah, you see a lot of people that, like me, have been in the professional world for more than 30 years, and now I'm doing mainly impact. A lot of people are switching to only impact type of corporations or the investors, and there's a lot of we used to be in the purchasing department at Hewlett Packard. Now it's more about ethical sourcing, all the compliance, seeking the right suppliers. So there's a lot of also social metrics like community development, social equity, social impact. So a lot of it, investors are looking for that too. So there's tracking the number of people that you're impacting in their lives. There's a lot of other metrics now that people are moving to. There's a lot of great professionals, and this is a great news, that are investing the later part of their professional life into impact only, and that's great. That's great. That's very good talent that we have on that side across the world.
Makes sense. So like this angle is still easy, I should say relatively easier, right? An investor who's trying to invest in new ventures, it's still a clean slate, let's put it this way. Now let's compare them to large funds, right? Which is either Sovereign Wealth Fund. Emad has worked with few in the region, even large, like private equity houses like Blackstone, BlackRock, and whatnot. They already have a baggage, right? They already have a baggage, and the assets go into trillions and trillions. It's very hard to think from their perspective, even though again intent is there. Everyone is trying to push in the same direction. How can such wealth managers or fund managers can imbibe this philosophy and try to align the portfolio in some shape and form?
I think
Emad,
when
yeah.
it comes to accountability, it's again dependent on what we're talking about, which level. But I think the question comes here, who's tracking it? When there is tracking, there is accountability. But one thing for sure, no doubt, is responsibility. We're all responsible for environmental and social impact. Now, to what extent? There is the minimum responsibility, which includes accountability, which is through enforceability. When there are, let's say, certain laws, when it comes to, today we have environmental environmental laws regulating individuals. We cannot throw waste on the street from the car, so there is here enforceability. Or when it comes to organizations, there are certain labor market regulations that would require certain diversity. So here there is also enforceability. But then there is also the level which exceeds beyond the minimum required, and that's where it comes down to the individual and to the organization. How much do they want to invest their time, their resources in it? Because it will pay them in the long run, whether for their reputation and brand or for fulfillment. A lot of individuals, from the stories that we just heard from Monica and the rest of the panelists, is you get fulfillment when you're dedicating your time and life to social and environmental, because at the end of the day, this is a meaningful impact. So if I were to summarize it, it comes down to enforceability, but also there is the volunteering. That's on an individual and business level. Now, if we're talking about a larger level governmental, here it comes down the strategic objectives. Are they required to do certain diversification? Are they required to create certain jobs? They have a mandate there to play, and it does have enforceability, and they are accountable for it.
Yeah, I agree, and a lot of it is also personal. But I think for us, it's like enough is enough for the impact fund. You know, we need to change the world. This is an emergency. A lot of people are already thinking that, thank God. But also, it has to be profitable. So you have some clothing companies, at least here, that it's 100% recycled clothes, but it has to be designer clothes. It has to be something really nice, and you have to want to wear those clothes. And now they're being really successful because it's great design, it's great fabrics, and they're doing well. So investors need to see that there's also a profit behind all of these startups, which many of them are impact driven. There's a lot more impact driven startups now than 5 years ago or 10 years ago. There's a lot of impact driven startups. So there's also the financial bottom line, of course, for the main investors, for the top investors, definitely.
Go ahead, Samarth, please. You're on mute, sorry.
So can we afford to be conscious, right? I think if I look at generationally what is happening from a trend standpoint, our elders at that time, the world at the per capita income was low. To be able to scale a product and offering, you had to sort of, bring the costs down. As generationally, we are becoming more affluent, right? And I'm not talking about income inequality of the top 1%. Still, generationally, the pool of people who can afford to be conscious of their decisions is growing. And that in itself is turning out to be a market segment to be able to target, which is translating into profits. So today we are at that cusp where at least there's the possibility of being able to present myself as a responsible business, because even if my cost and the pricing is higher, right, there is enough audience who's still willing to buy the story of that at least this is responsible. Right, from Adidas shifting their entire portfolio of shoes to recycled plastic, etc. Probably a few years ago, they didn't have an option because the purchasing power was not growing, right? So I think today companies can at least afford to drive their portfolios towards this, I would say, a purchase trend, because of the changing affluency of the consumer. At the end of the day, a company has to survive, has to create profits, right? But at least now they have the opportunity to back it with consumer demand to be able to at least dream of an environmentally or a socially better outcome. So that's happening generationally and will even improve by the next generation, as our next generations will be even more affluent than the average of our current generation.
I totally agree. There's a lot of pressure. I don't know if you heard that this week, a few kids they went to the European Parliament and they sued the European countries for the world that we're living them. So younger people are completely, like Samarth, you were saying, there's gonna be a lot of social pressure, and these people are working in companies too, are gonna be working in companies, and so there's this pressure. Of course, there's pressure for profit, but there's a lot of pressure from the society on profitable companies, yes, but also sustainable and environmentally impactful, definitely.
I think like these are great examples, and I guess it was 2 days ago I was like hearing one of the like videos from US Senator where she was trying to dissect that how a pharma company from 2013 to 2018 had spent $2.5 billion in R&D, $1.5 billion in litigation, and then $53 billion in shareholders' stocks buybacks, which is to pay those profits back to their shareholders and back to themselves. So this story and this narrative is something that, the bottom-up push and the bottom-up rage definitely helps. But there is still, like sections of organizations that needs to be pushed significantly. And I think Samarth made a good point about the cost of these products, accessing these products. The innovation has kicked in. So I guess as more and more options of these products comes in, younger generations and next folks will move, and sustainability will not become a thing as part of, or verticals within the organization. It will be embedded, deeply embedded within that. No, I think those are great points. Maybe one last question from my side before we move into the Q&A that has always that intrigued me, which is around the social versus, like we always talk about, there are profits and there is this non-financial like side of things. And within the non-financial, things might get tricky. For example, if you want to create a social impact, then you might disturb the environmental impact that you want to have. So for example, if you want to create jobs, you create a lot of jobs, but in which vertical or what kind of value chain of manufacturing or what kind of industry or business you are in. So how do you, I know there is no right or wrong answer, right? So how do you balance that if you want to push the social impact, you don't impact the environmental thing, and if you're pushing environmental impact, you don't impact the social side of things? Feel free in case anyone wants to like take it up, Samarth, Emad, or Monica. Go ahead.
So, I mean, economics was my favorite subject growing up, still is, right? So I think the way I would look at it is that if there are trade-offs, you have to obviously prioritize an objective over the other, but that does not necessarily mean that you can't put a foot in the ground and say that, okay, I might choose to optimize for, let's say, societal impact. And if decisions create a negative environmental impact, then I have to put a stake in the ground and say how much negative or neutral environment impact do I need to be at? Now, given that constraint, let's try and maximize a societal impact or a financial impact, right? So ultimately being clear about the threshold below which when it turns negative and just staying at that threshold and then optimizing the other two levers is probably one of the ways leaders can think about this either or dichotomy, right? So, but having that constraint in mind that you don't turn into the negative side of environmental, societal for the pursuit of profits, then choose to optimize for one of the two or two of the three, if not all three.
Yeah, I think I mean, the positive thing is that we're going to the triple bottom line concept. So we have profit, we have people, and we have planet. So now we're going from only profit to the three of them. And now if we have to choose between people and planet, wow, can we have all three of them? I think Europe is clearly focusing on green, green, green. But there's also a society that's always been really into social benefits and people already. So how can you mix all three of those? And which one do you choose? Well, it's a hard one. I don't know. It'd be hard to have to choose. I think most companies are going to look at all three of them. are looking at all three of them already. I think those are the good news.
Maybe just as a final point, I know that we're trying to move on to the Q&A, but I think, yes, all the three of them, I agree, to meet the minimum requirement.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to the voluntary, the voluntarily, optional contribution, that's where it's up to them, but also it's up to how much it aligns with them. So here we can think of what is my impact statement. So as an organization, you think of, for example, Google's impact statement. It's to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible. What is this impact? Social. And then a final example would be Tesla's impact statement, to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. That's an environmental impact statement. So we can think that how do we want to invest our resources? It goes and is aligned with our impact statement. But at the end of the day, we need to have the minimum requirement, and then it goes up to us how much further we want to go.
Yeah, no, I love that we are aligning towards that. There is no question around choosing one over the other. There has to be some kind of minima requirement threshold, and even some kind of an understanding that how do we define or how do we measure the impact like based on what we do. I think that's also a pretty good step, at least in that direction. All right, let's pick up something that we have in the chat. I guess this is quite interesting from Nishant, which is, and I guess this also like makes us think what is making them to, or like pushing them like towards this reporting of triple bottom line, because everyone loves profits, right? Organization wants to love profit. They don't want to get disturbed. Even the rage at the grassroots level is something, and even the SDGs is a very interesting angle that is making them rethink. But what is it that is really like pushing them and can make them serious, like, to be honest? And maybe just to add over there, he's also adding that who are the laggards and who are the leaders, like when it comes to understanding the concept and applying this thesis in the way of working. Samarth, go ahead, yeah.
My view is that versus governmental or sort of leadership, it has to be consumer demand led.
Yeah.
And there is now, as I was alluding to earlier, now there is a business case for companies to, so just as, let's say, iPhones, which was a technological impact that bankrupted Kodak, right? Similarly, I genuinely feel that consumers and large pool of consumers are shifting their demands to sustainable alternatives. Hence, a company, if they have to even survive and continue growing the profit, they have to invest in this, right? While there could be the European laws or there could be whatever, a government mandate or a good leadership mandate, but from a sustainable, scalable standpoint, it's the consumers, our choices that are going to keep the companies accountable with respect to who we buy from and what products we choose to buy from. At the end of the day, Apple has to stop using sweatshop factories in China. Ultimately, they will have to do it, right? Because the more publicity and advocacy that comes out about sourcing from sweatshops, there will be people who will say, I will not buy that product. So that's one of the ways of keeping these companies accountable.
Yeah, I think because of social media and because we're so connected, we know what everybody is doing, and people will choose companies that are doing things for the planet and doing things for people. And I think a lot of people already have the KPIs in mind, like the greenhouse emissions, the waste that people generate, energy consumption. So everything that has to do with how much can you heat the spaces right now, not only the public, but also the companies. When you go into a company, at least in Europe, you cannot have the air conditioning below this much, or the heat. So there's a lot of the fossil fuel, the sourcing, the ethically sourcing of these companies. People now know, as Samarth was saying that before, that people are really smart. They have a lot of information. They have a lot of knowledge about what each company is doing. This was not the case 40 or 50 years ago. You just bought whatever you could. You didn't even think about all these, if they hire women, if they hire people from different races, from different sexual preferences. Now all of this is something that people have in their mind. So when you see a picture of, I don't know, maybe all men in the CEO and everybody on the board, kind of like, what's going on here, right? So people have changed their standards in that sense, luckily, and you don't accept the way some companies work. You will not buy from them, and this is happening. So that's something that the society has evolved towards, and that's really, really important.
No, sounds good. I love the sorry, like Emad, you were saying something. Didn't mean to interrupt you, please.
Yeah, I mean, on this point, and it also addresses other questions that were that are in the chat. I think it is driven, social impact and environmental impact, or basically the triple bottom line, is driven by three forces. We've got law from the government, we've got shareholders as a requirement, minimum requirement, and then there is the demand, as you were saying, the consumer demand.
Yeah.
The laggers would be meeting the law only, but then the leaders would be meeting all of them and satisfying, fulfilling these. But then there's also self-fulfillment. So how much, how further we want to go. But I think, yeah, at the end of the day, today we are in an interconnected world, and there is the spotlight on all of these investments and businesses that are out there.
Yeah, no, completely agree. I do love the fact around consumer demand, because that is so fundamental. No matter how much friction we have, that will organically move us, in that direction. But Emad, agree with your point as well. Let's move to the next one. Let me pick something. Yeah, maybe the question that Tanya has posted, that's very interesting. Okay, so minimum wage concept on the social summits, you said that you at least have that in your mind as an operator of the company, that you will not be hiring people below the minimum wage, like based on obviously function of within the company that you have. As a startup founder, funding is always a challenge, right? So how do you balance this conundrum of yours?
No, that's easy. I think principles come at a cost, right? So as an entrepreneur, even if you're not externally funded, you need to incorporate with your own sort of, either it reflects in the pricing and you target the consumers who are willing to pay that price, right? Maybe at a reduced demand in absolute numbers, or you effectively have the corpus required to effectively bear the cost of your principles, right? Which means you hire at that price, and hence you wait that tad bit longer for the principal. So I think every leader defines their budget for business, and it'll be very contextual to each leader as to how they define the business, the budget of the cost of doing things the right way.
Yeah, makes sense. And obviously, look, the devil is in the detail, right? There will always be such instances where a founder, or even an organization for that matter, like everyone, like every operator, is like tested on those values and principles, and people need to decide and walk away,
Correct.
in those scenarios, and stick true to the values, and basically the culture of the organization that they are building. Perfect. I think that's a good true north. Let's put it this way. That's the compass that everyone should follow. One question I can pick up from Kusa: how is social and environmental impact portrayed by service organizations, unlike a mine or an oil refinery, for example. Yeah, that's interesting. I think it could be more like which sector you are in. On the left hand of the spectrum, which is oil and gas, quite heavy emitters. And on extreme right hand side, I don't know, maybe an NGO working in Amazon, or one of the startups that we work, like Rainforest Connection, that's working on rainforest like preservation. So how can these guys in different categories think about social and economic impact?
So I've been in energy. Oh, sorry. I've been in energy for 4 years at EIT. Energy. This was what it is. It's a European government company, and what they do is create startups. So a lot of these corporates, I don't know, British Petroleum, Repsol, Iberdrola, they actually do spend a lot of money through their vehicles, investment vehicles, so the corporate venture capital, to create also startups for clean energy. And they do a lot of programs for clean energy, for impact. And of course, they try to actually change their products to cleaner products as they go. And then there's the force of the auto and the energy governments, the energy laws, that is making them change the way they act. But they do invest a lot of money on clean energy startups. And that's true. I've seen that, at least across Europe. I'm not sure about US companies, but European oil and gas for sure. Yeah.
One other example here. Yeah. It's not related to oil, but it is related to mining. So I owned and operated at Lux Ventures a crypto mining facility, which consumes a lot of electricity compared to regular consumption, but not as much as other technologies. Anyway, one of the things that we considered is how can we balance the triple bottom line here, and that's when we started investigating other means of operating this facility, and we found immersion cooling facility, which reduces 99% of the heat, and it starts recycling the air that goes in, and I think there is always a way to think of how much from the value chain we can re-engineer the operations to make it fit, or if not possible, because at the end of the day, every business is there to make profit. That's why they're for-profit organizations. Then they can look for ways to be actively involved in such impact or contribute investments to support such causes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And also the innovation, right? So that's where it all comes from. If you are an organization who is fundamentally operating into that, you are an emitter, what kind of innovation you have access to? Has someone like innovated, for example, this like immersion tech that that you talked about, even for automakers like Tesla making all the patents freely available, was also an access that at least they have now access to the technology and they can figure it out. So definitely, I think the innovation curve also helps, at least for the organization who are heavy on the left-hand side of the spectrum.
Yeah, and I think there we have and I was a open innovation director at GB Foods. There's a very strong role, both in the startups and the investors, to allowing that faster innovation coming from outside, because a lot of times all these corporations are not able to innovate inside fast enough. So there's this triangle between the corporate innovation departments, the investors, and also the startups that play a really nice role in. And it's not easy for startups to work with corporates and vice versa, but that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like a very interesting interaction I had like 2 weeks ago. I met two gentlemen upstream. Like they are like drillers. They have been drilling at rig site for last 20-25 years, and their view was, look, oil and gas is not going away. The phone that you hold, the laptop you work on, they are all kind of byproduct when it comes to downstream processing. Their view was that how do you kind of counterbalance and still support these sectors, right? There's like definitely a shift towards renewables, but then there will still be fundamental things that we use or even consume that will still perhaps take, much, much longer to like have that shift. Perfect. Thank you, Imad, Monica, and Samarth. It has been a very insightful conversation. We do touch upon certain key insights around, consumers shifting the demand, the innovation curve, how to balance the trilemma, and many more, right? So I really wanted to thank all of you and also, people who have joined. Andre, your comments has been phenomenal. I have been reading through it. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. But yeah, thanks a lot, and thanks for like tuning in for this webinar.